Okay, good. All right, folks, welcome. This is a formal welcome to the Daily Power Parsha. It is great to see you all. Let's begin studying some Torah for the day. We have a really fascinating section in the Torah portion. Torah portion this week is Re'eh, and you can find it. Give me a moment here. You can find it in your... see if this is working. Yeah. You can find it in your... No, I'm sorry. You're not looking at a book. So all I'm doing is sharing my screen with you. Okay, here we go. Torah reading Re'eh. Let's get reading number Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. This is reading number 4. And today we talk about the laws of kosher. We talk about food. Okay, everyone should be developing an appetite as we talk about all of the wonderful things that human beings consume. Here we go. We're going to start off with seemingly an unrelated topic, which is about the laws of personal sanctity. And this is Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse number 1. Take a look at what it says. For you are children of the Lord your God. You shall neither cut yourselves nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. This is the prohibition against self-mutilation, cutting oneself, or pulling out one's hair while in the context of mourning. Now, to explain, it seems that there was an ancient custom that when people lost a loved one, they would sometimes self-harm. They would sometimes cause themselves physical pain as an expression, maybe as a sign of the loss and their pain. They would do something physically to kind of either demonstrate that or as a cathartic exercise to kind of get that out of their system, if you will, or out of their, out from being inside to express it on the outside. Either way, Jewish law forbids that. And the rationale why it's prohibited is found in verse number 2, where the Torah says, "For you are a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a treasured people for him out of all of the nations that are upon the earth." And that essentially is the rationale behind it. In other words, because you are a holy people, because God has chosen you to be a treasured people, therefore the Torah says, you and I, we are not allowed to self-harm, to in any way cause our own body harm. This becomes a major principle in Jewish law, where it says that a person is not allowed to, even with their own choice, enter into a situation that is self-harming. So, for example, if a person says to another person, "Hit me," right? "Hit me! I'm ready to take a punch. Hit me." So you can't do that. You can't hit another person. You can't harm another person, even if they're requesting it. Why? Because, as the Torah says here, a person can't harm themselves, let alone someone else, even with that consent. And the rationale behind it is that our bodies are not really our own, they are on loan from God. And if they're on loan from God, so our job is to take care of it and to not harm it. So typically, we don't do anything that's going to harm the body. Now, obviously, if a person needs a surgery and you have to cut into the body to help, to assist, to make a person better, obviously you do it. You're allowed to do it. But voluntary surgeries would actually be a question, right? Can a person go under the knife for not something that is, life-saving, but something that is a voluntary thing? So I want to share with you an interesting question that was asked to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. He was one of the great, I mentioned him in a recent class. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was a rabbi on the Lower East Side in New York, and he from the old country, but he lived in New York in the mid to late 1900s. I mean, he was in the 20th century. He was a modern New York rabbi who was an expert in Jewish law, and he was asked a question about what's the official name? Rhinoplasty? Is that what they call a nose job? Yeah, about the cosmetic surgery. So he was asked, according to Jewish law, is it permitted? Because it's not a life-saving thing. I know sometimes there could be like a deviated septum, so for breathing purposes you need it done. Okay, that's something else. This was completely cosmetic. And the question was, according to Jewish law, is it permitted? And that's based on what we're studying right now in the Torah, Deuteronomy chapter 14, verses 1 and 2, that essentially tell us about the prohibition against self-harm, against damaging, defacing, harming, cutting, etc., one's body voluntarily. So again, if it's necessary, that's one thing, but what about voluntary? So he was asked, but the way the question was phrased is, this was a young woman who was looking to get married, and her thought was that if she did it, she would be more self-confident, and she would find a match easier. And so the rabbi said, you know what, if it's going to put her mind at ease, of something that she's struggling with, her own self-perception of her own image, and this is going to help, so the rabbi said it would be okay, because there is a benefit, there's a demonstrable benefit for her, even though maybe her life is not at stake physically, but her state of mind is going to be affected by this. So the rabbi said it would be permitted in that case. But of course, with all such cases of Jewish law, your mileage may vary, and therefore consult your local rabbi before making, before jumping into a conclusion based on a story. But the bottom line is that this is a very important law, and it affects many different areas. We talked about football before the class for a minute. The question is, can a person set themselves up in harm's way? Can a person choose to engage in an activity that puts their life at risk? It's discussed in Jewish law, by the way. One of the answer is generally no, but if it's to earn a living, there is a certain degree of risk that one is permitted to take in order to earn a livelihood. So for no reason, just for fun, for kicks, whatever, no. But if it's to earn a livelihood, understanding that we need to support ourselves, and therefore sometimes we have to do things that are a little bit risky. So there is a threshold of risk that a person is permitted to take up until that point, but beyond that point, it would not be permitted according to Jewish law. That value of risk is discussed in Jewish law by the various experts in Jewish law, and then it would be a question of, let's say, for example, playing football. What is the level of risk? Mortality rate, early onset of, whatever it is, what is it, CRT or something, whatever the CTE, brain damage, etc. Yeah, that would have to be discussed and explored. Okay, so that's a little bit about the opening of today's reading, which talks about no self-harm, even in the context of losing a loved one. One thing that you might know is that in Jewish law, the custom is to cut the garment. We take the garment that a person is wearing, and actually we make a cut in the garment to signify the loss that they've just experienced. When a person's loved one, God forbid, passes away, so it's called kriya. You rip the garment. You don't cut the person, you cut the garment. Today, it's been popularized in some communities to put a pin, like a mourner's pin on a garment, but in traditional Jewish law, there's no pin. It's actually, you actually make an incision. You actually make a cut to the garments. Hey, Mark. Good to see you. Okay, so that's a little bit about this. Another point is that verse 2 is a rationale for verse 1 for the following reason. When it says that we are a holy people to the Lord your God, what that also means is that we believe in the afterlife. We believe in something after this life, which means that death doesn't mark the end, the absolute end of a person's life. It marks a transition, and therefore, if it's only a transition and not an end, we shouldn't take such an absolute action as actual self-harm, cutting oneself. Okay, let's move on to talk about food. Verse number 3 now talks about food. It says, you shall not eat any abomination. What is an abomination? This is referring to non-kosher. So what are the animals that we are allowed to eat? So before we jump in, there are 3 categories. Well, let's talk about food categories. So let's just give basic general guidelines for food and for kosher. I'm going to start from the ground up. If you want to eat earth and minerals, knock yourself out. It's all kosher. Salt is kosher, right? I don't know what other minerals you want to eat. I don't know if it's healthy or recommended, but salt is kosher. I know salt comes from wherever salt comes from, it's kosher. Now, next, above that, vegetation. Here's the rule of thumb. All vegetation is kosher. That's it. Go to your grocery store, go to your favorite place, wherever it is, buy your groceries. It's all kosher. You can buy a banana, you can buy a watermelon, you can buy a avocado, you can buy lettuce, you can buy grapes, you can buy whatever it is. It's all kosher. It doesn't need to be certified. That's it. It's stuff that grows from the ground is kosher. With the following caveat: if it's prepared, if somebody cut it up, then there might be a problem. Because if somebody else cut it up, now the question is, what kind of knife did they use? What surface did they put it on? How do you know that they weren't cutting a steak that's not kosher or something else, and then they cut the watermelon? So it becomes complicated if somebody did something to it. But if it's just picked fruit sitting, or vegetables, fruits or vegetables sitting in the wherever it is, it's kosher. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about so then the category above, plants and vegetables, fruit and vegetables, basically are living creatures like animals, fish, and birds, and that's where the laws of kosher really come in. See, everything until now is pretty much kosher, but once you get into living creatures, now you have a question about what yes and what no. So the Torah begins with land animals. And the Torah says the following in verse number 4. These are the animals that you may eat: an ox, lamb, and kid, gazelle, deer, and antelope, ibex. I don't know what that animal is. Chamois? Chamois? What's that? Is that an animal?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I didn't know chamois were kosher. They are in France, in the French Alps, all over. They're like a little, a goat with a big, like, horn.
Well, there. See, now you know. Next time you see one, you can wrangle one, and you got dinner.
You know, I have something else to eat when I go to.
There you go. Bison and giraffe. Giraffe are kosher. Okay, and what's the rule of thumb? Here we go. Every animal that has a split hoof and has a hoof cloven into two hoof sections and chooses the cud among the animal and choose the cud among the animals that you may eat. I'm not crazy about that translation. It's making it sound weird. Whatever. The two signs of a kosher animal are having split hooves and chewing its cud. If a land animal does both of these things, or has both of these features, so to speak, a split hoof and chewing its cud, it's kosher. That's it. You're good to go. It's kosher. But what if it has only one and not the other? Verse 7. But you shall not eat of those that only chew the cud, or of those that only have split hoofs. In other words, if they have only one of the signs, I added the word only because just to explain. If they only have one sign, Mark, we're matchy. Kippah. Look at you. Look at you and me. If it has only one of the signs, then it's not kosher. So here's an example of animals that only have hold on. See a Parsha 8.12.20. I don't know why this translation is throwing me off here. But you shall eat of those that chew the cud, or of those that have split hooves. The cloven one. The cloven one belongs before these guys, before the colon, whatever. Okay, here are animals that have one and not the other. The camel, not kosher. The hyrax, not kosher. The hare, not kosher. Why? Because all three chew their cud, they don't have split hooves. Therefore, they're unclean for you, it's not kosher. They only do the chewing of the cud, they don't have the split hooves. No good. And the last one is, the last example the Torah gives that one and not the other is the pig, the chazir. Chazir, if you want to see chazir, written in the Torah. There you go. Vesach chazir. The pig. Why is the pig not kosher? Because although it has a split hoof, does not chew its cud. So it has the reverse, right? The other three, the camel, the hyrax, and the hare, they chew their cud but don't have split hooves. The pig has the split hooves, doesn't chew its cud. It's unclean for you. You shall neither eat of their flesh nor touch their carcass. Off limits. Okay, fine. So that's it with animals. Super simple. Again, if you're eating vegetables and fruit, knock yourself out. Salt, pepper, whatever. Well, actually, no. Those could be prepared. Okay. Anything natural from the ground, yes. Animals, here's your rule of thumb. Split hooves and chewing the cud, one and not the other, no good. Now, why is the pig considered to be, by some, like the epitome of not kosher? There are tons of animals that aren't kosher. But we don't call, when you want to refer to somebody in a negative way, sometimes you say, oh, what a pig, what a chazer. In Hebrew or Yiddish, a chazer, unbelievable, can't believe it, and it's like the ultimate of not kosher. Why? It seems very arbitrary. Why don't we talk, oh, what a camel, what a hyrax, what a hare. For that matter, what about zebras and lions, and there's so many different animals that aren't kosher. Why do we pick on the pig? Poor pig. Simple answer, and it's a powerful answer, and our sages share it. Because look at the sign that the pig does have. It does have the split hoof. How does a pig rest, sit down? It sticks its little hooves out. So our sages say, you know what's wrong with the pig? Not that it's not kosher. Many things are not kosher. The pig, though, when it sits down, it sticks its toes out to say, look at me, I'm kosher, when in truth it doesn't chew its cud and it's not kosher. So why is a pig a pig? Because it pretends to be kosher when it's not. If it just reveals its truth, fine, not kosher. Like a lot of things aren't kosher, no big deal. We won't eat you. We'll hang out together. But if you tell me that you are kosher when you're really not, now you're trying to fool me, now you're lying, and now we got a problem. That's being a pig. So the reason why the pig is a problem is not because it's not kosher, because it's pretending to be kosher. Now, you might tell me, one second, you mean to tell me all pigs are pretending? This is not about the individual pig, it's about the concept. Something that appears one way, but in truth is another way, that's another level of deviousness. Even though it's not intentional, we're not blaming the pig, but that's where the notion comes from. That's where the negative reputation of the pig comes from. By the way, this might even be in Rashi's commentary. Let's see if it is. No. Probably in the prior Torah portion. This is the second time that that kosher is discussed in Torah. It's also discussed in the book of Leviticus and Shmini. So maybe there Rashi talks about it. Also, when it eats, it buries its nose in food, so you can't see. You can't see that it's not chewing its cud. Maybe, yeah. In other words, it's trying to, again, it's not intentional. No one's being blamed. It's not a literal thing, but it's symbolic. It's all symbolism. It's not kosher, but it's a symbolic of a deeper level of, look, some people are your friends, some people are not your friends, but it's good to know who's who. Somebody says, oh, I'm your friend, and meanwhile, it's not your that's another level. That's just straight up another level. Okay, so that's the pig. By the way, the pig, if I'm not mistaken, well, I know it's the only animal mentioned in Torah that has the split hoof, but not chewing its cud. But I don't believe there's another animal in existence that has the same single feature of the split hoof, but not chewing its cud. I'm pretty sure the pig is unique. With all of our discoveries and all of our migrations around the world, I don't know that there's another animal that has just the split hoof, but not the chewing of the cud. I think it's just, my understanding is it's just a pig. Now, let's move on. Let's talk about fish. Because fish are also living creatures that also need some criteria to be kosher. These you may eat of all that are in the waters, fish. All that have fins and scales, that's it. So, fins and scales, that's all you need. If it has fins and scales, kosher. But whatever does not have fins and scales, you shall not eat, it is unclean for you. And once again, if it just has the one and not the other, it's not kosher. It needs to have both. So what are some? Notice the Torah doesn't even give examples of fish that have fins and scales or don't, because it's kind of it's an obvious thing. You don't need to be a great expert. You look at the fish, right? A shark, not kosher. An eel, not kosher. An octopus, not kosher, right? A jellyfish, stay away, but not kosher, right? A salmon, kosher. Trout, kosher. Tuna, kosher. A gefilte, absolutely kosher. You know how you can tell when you're fishing? You can tell which one is the gefilte fish. It's the one that's swimming with a carrot on its back. It's the one with the carrot, that's how you know. All right, that's the old joke. Okay, fine. So that is the story with fish. And what about birds? Torah says you may eat every clean bird. Okay, what does that mean? The Torah lists what we can't eat. So this is notice this is a departure. Before, when it comes to animals and fish, it tells you the kosher signs. Here it tells you by birds the unkosher signs, or the unkosher type. Here, these are the birds that you should not eat. The eagle, or the griffin vulture. I love that. Most people translate nesher in Hebrew as an eagle. But apparently there's another interpretation that has this as the griffin vulture. Look, I'm not a bird expert. I don't even know what the name for a bird expert is. And I know there's a name for it. There's like a whole fancy name for it. So a griffin vulture, I would have to Google it to tell you exactly what that is. But you can Google it also. So we can Google together maybe later. The eagle or the griffin vulture, the Gesundheit here. How do you pronounce this? The ossifrage. Exactly. The osprey, the white vulture, the black vulture, the kite after its species, every raven after its species. So the Baltimore Colts, I don't know if Colts are kosher, but the ravens now, definitely not kosher. Okay, the ostrich, the owl, the gull, and the hawk, the falcon, rise up, the ibis, I don't know what that is, and the bat, we know what that is. The pelican, the magpie, and the cormorant is great. The stork, the heron and its species, and the hoopoe and the atolef. And okay, great. Wonderful. All of these birds are not kosher. So what's the common denominator? So typically these are all birds of prey. Not birds of prey like that, P-R-A-Y, but P-R-E-Y. These are birds that hunt and that kill and that are a little bit vicious. And the commentaries point out that the Torah God does not want us to take in the energy of a bird of prey, something that kills and that hunts. So therefore, we don't eat these birds. Now you might say, well, all birds are birds of prey, and therefore, actually today, our custom is we don't eat any birds except for the ones that we have a clear tradition from all the way back that they are kosher. So the only birds that we eat typically are chicken. The fowl that we eat is chicken, turkey. Some people don't even eat turkey. There are families, Jewish families, that have a tradition not to eat turkeys. Why? I think there's a story that goes back that one of the patriarchs of one of these families back in the shtetl once saw turkeys like harming or attacking and said, there's no way that this is not a bird of prey. There's no way this is kosher. And so that family tradition is not to eat turkey. Whatever. But we only go with birds that we know, and so it's very, very limited in the bird family. Okay. No eating bats for us. Next is about insects. Here we go. What about grasshoppers? 19. Every flying insect is unclean for you. They may not be eaten. There you go. By the way, in Shmini, in the other Torah portion, Leviticus, it does talk about some types of locusts and grasshoppers that are kosher, but it's very specific, and we don't really know. Many don't. Some say they know, but most Jewish communities are saying we don't know, and are therefore not eating any of that stuff. You may eat any clean fowl, and again, I'm assuming this refers to chicken, turkey, whatever. You shall not eat any carcass. this refers to an animal that that dies without proper shchita, without proper ritual slaughter. You shall not eat any carcass. You may give it to the stranger who is in your cities, that he may eat it, or you may sell it to a foreigner. In other words, you're allowed to benefit, you're allowed to profit off of it. You can sell it, but you can't eat it. For you are a holy people to Lord your God. Oh, and then, of course, we conclude one of 3 times in Torah that this exact phrase is used. You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. As Mark pointed out, I think last week, or maybe a few days ago, or maybe both, not both, one or the other, that in ancient times, that was actually a form, I think you said, it was a form of idolatry, of idol worship. Either way, it's cruel and unusual, and I mean, this is, imagine like the milk is representative of life for this gedi, for this kid goat, and now you're cooking in its mother's milk. But the fact that it said 3 times teaches us not only are we not allowed to cook the kid in his mother's milk, we can't eat it together, and we also cannot, there's an Isser Achila, there's an Isser Bishul, Achila, and Hana. You can't cook it, you can't eat it together, and you can't benefit, derive a profit from that mixture, which means that having an ownership stake in a place that mixes meat and milk would be halachically problematic because you're profiting off of that mixture. There are ways around it. You can have an investment in not the food part of the operation, but in the other. There are ways to work to create structure contracts, but in general, we're not allowed to cook, eat, or benefit from the mixture of meat and milk. Okay, so that's it. I mean, that's not it. Maybe I'll share 1 or 2 other insights, but that's basically the overview of the laws of kosher. So a question that comes up very often, before I get to the question, about a kosher question, and kosher is a really big topic unto itself, and a very important topic. But before I get there, let me just clarify one thing. When it comes to animals, first step is ascertaining that the animal is kosher. The next step is slaughtering it in a kosher fashion, because you can't just kill an animal. It's considered to be cruel, and it renders it not kosher. You can have a cow that you shoot, and it's not kosher anymore because you shot it. It has to be shechted with a knife, with a super, super, super sharp knife. I've seen these. Oh, not kid tender. I've seen these knives. My grandfather, when he was working as a shochet, as a ritual slaughterer, he would have the knives around his house, and I used to come by and check him out. Massive knives, perfectly smooth, incredibly smooth. In fact, in Jewish law, in order for a knife, for shchita, for shechting, for slaughter to be kosher, it has to be perfectly sharp. You have to take your fingernail and run it up the edge, the entire length of the blade. If at any point there's a nick in the blade, if as you're gently moving your fingernail up the knife, there's any sort of hiccup or interruption, it's not a good knife. Why? Because the understanding is when you apply it to the neck of the animal, it's gonna pull, and it's gonna cause the animal additional pain. So shchita, ritual slaughter, is done in the most humane possible way. Look, the most humane way is to let the animal live, but we're allowed to eat meat. The Torah says we're allowed to eat meat. I discussed it a little bit last night in our Jewish Course of Why course. Bottom line is that it has to be done in the correct fashion. Even after it's slaughtered, the animal, there's somewhat of an examination done to make sure that the animal is a healthy animal. If the animal is not healthy, then you cannot eat it. It becomes not kosher. So it needs to be a kosher type of animal. It needs to be slaughtered kosher, and it needs to be checked to make sure that it's healthy. If there's, if the internal organs are damaged or unhealthy, you can't eat it. And then the blood has to be taken out. As we know, there's a prohibition. We read about that a few days ago, prohibition against eating blood. And then there's certain parts of the animal that you can't eat, the hindquarters, certain fats, etc. And after all of that, what's left is kosher. It's kosher meat. Kosher fish, less complicated. Why? Because kosher fish don't have to be shechted. No slaughter, no examination, no nothing. Take the fish out of the water, and it's no longer alive, you can eat it. Done. When it comes to birds, birds also have to be shechted, slaughtered, but in a bit of a different way. I mean, a similar way, but it's a little bit of a lesser standard. When I say lesser standard, when it comes to it, there's whatever. Without getting into the details, it's a modification of the process. And once again, you do a quick check to make sure that everything looks okay, and then the bird is prepared, and the blood is and it's prepared in a kosher fashion. So that's kind of the rundown. So really, the questions come in about kosher, like the intricacies come in when you're eating meat, you're eating animals, you're eating something from a live creature. When you're eating the other stuff, it's not a problem. But of course, today, life is not so simple. Why? Because even though you can check the packaging of a product and it says only natural ingredients and there's no animal products and it seems 100% kosher, nonetheless, none of us know, without having been there, what that manufacturing plant and what the process of manufacturing looks like. We don't know what's going on in the food plant and what is being mixed in that doesn't have the threshold that the FDA requires it to be listed in the ingredients. And we don't know what ran on the line right before it, and we don't know how well it was cleaned after whatever ran before it on that on a production line. We don't know unless we're in the manufacturing, unless we're there. That's why there are organizations in the United States and internationally that their job is to go into the manufacturing plants and take a look at all the ingredients, not just read the label, but look at everything going into the process, look at the line, look at what's before it and after, look at how it's cleaned, and then put their stamp of approval on it and say, it's kosher. We've been there, we've seen it, we do spot checks, and we can tell you with certainty that this is a kosher product, and that's what we call a hechsher. Hechsher means a kosher symbol. And so I have something a bit random right here. This is a very large mango smoothie situation. Okay, mighty mango for the kids. And take a look at this. Can you see? It's got right over there is an OK. You see that little symbol? A little K inside an O? Right there, next to my pen. Little K, it's a little blurry there, but yeah, you get the basic idea. It's an OK, that's the OK. It's one of the certifying agencies. There's the OU, the OK, the Chav K, all sorts of different organizations. So you have to trust the organization, and the organization has trusted people, and they go in and they check. Look, this, I can read the label. Mango puree, apple juice from concentrate, orange juice, banana puree, lemon juice, natural flavor, beta carotene. Sounds great. So why do I need a hechsher? Okay, because you and I don't know what's on it. You and I don't know what's in it. It says natural flavors. Well, what are the natural flavors? Right? Natural flavors. Yeah, no. You want to specify? So the FDA, I have the right organization? Yeah? The FDA, no. The food, yeah, Food and Drug, yeah. So the FDA, yeah. So the FDA says, no problem. You don't have to list it. If it's less than a certain percentage, you don't have to list it. But Jewish law says, if it's not kosher, it's not kosher. Don't tell me it's a minute amount. It's not kosher. And even if it's batal b'shishim, if it's nullified 1 in 60, you can't do that intentionally. That's only if by accident something fell in. You can't design a line and a product to create an item, a food product, that intentionally puts in, the dye from a beetle, which is, by the way, not a far-fetched thing. Some red dyes come from crushed beetles. Do you know this? This is not an urban legend. This is not fake news. This is legit. This is legit. There is a process by which you can get red dye or whatever it is through crushing insects. That's not kosher. Insects are not kosher.
There's also meat enzyme in cheese.
Say it again?
There's also meat enzyme. I don't know how you pronounce
it.
Yeah,
enzyme, yeah.
Some meat stuff can be in the cheese to keep
Correct.
it conserved.
Yes. Right, there's rennet, whatever they call. I'm not sure what the the medical terms are, but yeah, there are things that are put in to kind of as a catalyst to get it turn it from
candies.
yeah, to turn it into the thing. So yeah, that's why it's important to buy items with the hechsher, with the kosher symbol on it. You would be surprised if you go into any grocery store, whether it's the Publix and the Kroger, or whether it's Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or Lidl or Aldo, you would be surprised at how prevalent kosher is. How often you see the kosher mark. Costco, whatever, there's kosher everywhere. And usually, unless you're buying certain categories of food that are just not kosher, but if you're buying a category of food that if a person is like, where's the kosher pork? You're probably not going to find one with a hechsher on it. But if you're looking for smoothie, you're looking for ketchup, you're looking for rice, you're looking for a quinoa, you're looking for whatever it is, something that's processed, you'll find a kosher version of it, almost guaranteed. There's some on the shelf, one of them, at least one of them, if not all of them, will have the kosher symbol on it. It's relatively easy to do kosher, to buy kosher. Again, the complication, not complication, but you have to be more mindful when you're buying something that's from an animal product, or really anything that could have an animal product in it, has to be certified. But when it comes to the meat, but look, the way to avoid that is just to go to a kosher butcher, and then you don't have to think about it, because whatever you buy there is kosher. So whether it's Kosher Gourmet, in Atlanta, in Toco Hills, Toco Thrills, whether it's Griller's Pride, whatever, up a little bit north, wherever you're buying your stuff from, if you go to a kosher butcher and you trust them, then you're getting kosher meat. That's it. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I'm saying it makes sense. I should ask you if it makes sense. I'm telling you it makes sense. Michael, good to see you. Welcome. All right, any questions about kosher? Who's got a kosher question? Mark, go ahead.
I've got a quick comment.
Yes.
Years ago, I said to myself, why shouldn't mock crab from Louis Rich be kosher? So I called the company itself. And let me tell you what they told me. I was shocked. It's not on the label, but the company, Louis Rich themselves, told me this. They said, yes, it's fine. If you're vegan, vegetarian, it's fine. I said, no, is it kosher? Oh, no, it's not kosher. Why? They use a minute amount of blood to make it red.
Wow. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, that's what they told me.
See that?
Yeah.
By the way, there is today, due to the marvels of modern competition, today there are, I think, Dino something. There's a Dino company that has that faux crab that's kosher. That's all of the kosher California rolls of sushi are made with that fake crab stuff. So listen, to me it tastes like the real stuff. I'm kidding. I've never had the real stuff, so who would know? But no, it's listen. The bottom line is there's enough to eat. There's enough to eat and be kosher. By the way, I will say this: as kosher, look, in my opinion, kosher. It's not as like hard. When I say hard, it's not as formidable or difficult as it might appear to be. It's manageable. It's doable. Certainly in 2020, it's doable. I mean, you can sit on your phone. No, don't sit on your phone. You can sit down, pull out your phone, pull up an app, Instacart or whatever, and do kosher shopping from wherever you are, and then have kosher delivered to your house. That's how easy kosher is. Kosher is very easy to do. Look, it takes a little bit of mindfulness, but what was I going to say? I don't know. I had a train of thought there. Whatever. Bottom line is, kosher is doable, and it's manageable. Oh, I know what I was saying. If you're thinking about it, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? You can do, like, more kosher. So introduce more kosher items into the repertoire, and see how that works out for you, right? And go from there. So bottom line is, it doesn't need to be daunting or like so big, like, oh, kosher, nah, not for me. Why not? Try it. Try some. I would say, look in your kitchen, look in your pantry. You look at the labels, OU, OK, Chav K, whatever, star K. OR, I'm kidding. No OR. OR is registered trademark. Or is that's on everything. That's not a kosher symbol. Oh, everything's got OR. No. But I would say that a big percentage of what you already have is kosher. So just keep on adding to your repertoire. Go kosher. Go more kosher. That's it. That's my my encouragement for the day. Look, today's energy is kosher. Let's go more kosher. Okay, good to see you all. Stan, good to see you. Mark, good to see you. Matt, good to see you. Michael, great to see you. Welcome.
Hey, Rabbi.
Good to see you, Rabbi.
Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
Wait, I have a quick comment.
Oh, and Sandrine. I didn't forget about you. Hi, Sandrine. Matt, go ahead.
So I did the same thing. I would go to Trader Joe's to go shopping, and then when I checked my cabinet, so many of the things had OU in it that I didn't notice.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny. But then regarding kosher for meat, I know that wouldn't be within the Torah, but do the rabbis talk about, I guess currently, let's say, industrialized agriculture, and does that affect any type of kosher labeling?
Great question. So at its core, kosher is about two things. Number one, food that God has determined, God has told us, is good for the soul and for the body. And number two, that we take care of the animal in the slaughtering process. So there are certain mechanics, certain parts of the process that are regulated by Jewish law. Now, here's where I'm sharing my personal feelings. My personal feelings are that the assumption was we were going to take care of the animals, because in Judaism, in Jewish law, there are many prohibitions against any sort of cruelty or harm to animals. Again, we're not supposed to harm anything, right, wantonly or otherwise, so let alone an animal living creature. So I think that's assumed. Now, does that affect the hechsher, the kosher status? In a literal way, in a legalistic way, the answer is no, in the sense that as long as it's a kosher animal, it was slaughtered properly and it was checked to be healthy, and the blood was taken out, it's kosher. But there has been a movement in recent years to also think about the ethical considerations of how the animal is raised and how it's fed and the conditions that it's kept. And I personally am behind those efforts. I'm not one second. I'm not on the farms behind those efforts, but I support those efforts. But with the clarification that wouldn't legally make it not kosher if those protocols weren't followed. Because kosher does have a specific criteria, but the spirit of the law, I think we should try to maintain. And there have been efforts, thank God there have been efforts, as the world becomes more aware and more sensitive in general, so we have a lot of the sensitivity transferring over. But in general, I don't know that, I think that in ancient times, some of these things didn't have to be stated. You lived with animals. So you were going to not take care of the animal? You lived with the animals. Of course you were sensitive. Today we're desensitized. Why? Because the only interaction we have with animals is either in a zoo or on a shelf in a package. And that's not even the animal anymore. That's the meat. So we're very disconnected from nature, from animal life. And because of that, there's more of a danger. And of course, it goes without saying, the biggest piece of it is the industrialized nature of the business. I can't tell you how many chickens, for example, a place like Purdue is handling each and every day. And the process is, frankly, horrific. Absolutely horrific. I'm talking about just the killing process. Absolutely horrific. You can't compare that to a shochet who studies Kabbalah before and prays before and is mindful before and during with the proper intention that a ritual slaughter has to have, and feels the connection and feels the pain, but knows that ultimately God has allowed it for kosher, for that consumption, etc. But it's a different experience. It's a human interaction. They line them up. It's absolutely horrific the way kills are done, whether it's chicken or animals. I want to say in the larger world. Thank God for kosher. Is there room to improve the farming aspect of it? I'm sure, And there are movements to improve that as well. Would that render it not kosher? No, not strictly according to the letter of the law, but the spirit of what Judaism is about, we should be striving for more and more, whatever the right word, compassion, or whatever, care for the animals. One more thing about that. I mentioned before, what was I talking about? The killing of the animals and the mass production. Oh, I want to end with a story because it is getting late, so I'll end with a quick story. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Chassidic movement, the Baal Shem Tov, was in his early years, he was a shochet, a ritual slaughterer. And he was a slaughterer in a town for a while, and either he moved or he passed away. I don't remember how the rest of the story plays out, but at a certain point in time, they had to find a new shochet, a new ritual slaughterer. And so they hired somebody who was very, very good person, very well versed in law, very God-fearing, etc. And you need someone who's God-fearing, by the way. God-fearing means that if it's not kosher, they say it's not kosher, and they don't care that there's a loss of the money. That's what I mean by God-fearing. Because otherwise, did anyone see that? Kosher. That's why God-fearing is a key component. You put your trust in every step of the way that whoever certified, right, was caring about kosher. Now, and knew that God was watching. Now, the story goes that they hired another ritual slaughterer, and there was an assistant, the same assistant, not Jewish fellow, but assistant who helped out the Baal Shem Tov, helped out this guy, and he sees the guy shechting, and he says, "You're not doing it right." "What do you mean?" "No, it's not kosher." This guy, he said, "You're telling me it's not kosher? I know the law. You're just a..." He says, "What do you mean?" It's like, "It's not kosher." It's like when the Baal Shem Tov used to shech the animal, he would cry tears, and he would sharpen his knife with the tears that he cried. That's how he would sharpen his knife, with the tears. You need a little liquid to sharpen. He would sharpen the knives with his tears. That's how he would. You're not sharpening it that way. It's not the same. It's not the same deal. This is an insight into the world of somebody who's really sensitive, somebody who understands what life is, understands what an animal is, understands what this world is like, and understands also the place of eating meat when, in certain contexts, and understands that to take the life of an animal is not a simple thing, and it certainly cannot be mass industrialized. It's not the Jewish way. All right, that's it. That's a long daily power parsha. Thank you all for staying with me. The original concept was about 15 minutes. Then we grew to a half an hour. We're still to a half an hour, 12 to 12:30. Today is an extra special, extended edition, expanded edition. Great to see you all. Have a wonderful day. I should mention soon, almost, good night. I'm kidding. Have a wonderful day. Tonight is Torah studies. We're going to talk about the art of giving and about the importance of giving, not only what we give, but how we give, why that's so critical, the gift of dignity. So, join me tonight at 7:30, and otherwise, join me for more fun and adventure and Torah stuff soon. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you, Rob.
Pleasure. Great to see you guys. Take care. Bye. You